Just in case you weren't paying attention or were doing something else on Tuesday, there was a nicely orchestrated rollout of information about a new vinyl reissue that I'm going to tell you about today. It started in the morning on the Capitol Interscope website, the Definitive Sound Series page. All of a sudden, there it was. The Beach Boys' Pet Sounds is going to get a Definitive Sound Series one-step edition, mastered by Chris Bellman, from an unusual tape source. Then, in the afternoon, a wonderful article appeared in the Tracking Angle by Michael Fremer. In the article, he explains a lot of the background about this particular release and about prior releases as well, and makes a convincing case why this may end up to be the definitive sound of Pet Sounds. Then later in the evening, on Steve Westman's channel, the Audiophile Roundtable, he invited three guests: Chris Bellman, Michael Fremer, and Tom Grover Beery. And in that hour-long plus discussion, they discuss all the details. I'll try to recap most of that here. The story goes, collectors over the years have known about a particular pressing of Pet Sounds that stands above the others. It has garnered a cult reputation. It's not an obvious choice. It's not the first pressing. It is a 1972 remastering done for Brother Records, which was Reprise's custom label for the Beach Boys. So they had a lot more control over their own catalog at that point. And they decided to do Pet Sounds over again. Apparently, as Michael Fremer describes it, the original release of Pet Sounds was a rushed affair. They had put out 3 albums just prior to that. They were trying to get this out on schedule. Of course, it was pressed by the boatload, and they didn't really get the care that they wanted for this very special record. Original pressings reportedly sound pretty bad. I don't have one here, but I'm not surprised. Originally issued in mono, it was mixed in mono by Brian Wilson, and there was a stereo edition. Well, I wouldn't call it stereo. If you know Capitol's history, they had something called duophonic. Duophonic was like a fake stereo taken from the mono tape. So they did some phasing things and delay to give it a stereo feeling, and everyone dislikes those. Don't bother picking up a duophonic pressing of anything. But yeah, there was the mono, and it wasn't until much later that a stereo remix was done, I think in the 90s. And it had to be done digitally. So the mono is really the way to hear Pet Sounds. And by all accounts, the Carl and the Passions twofer, which Brother Records put out, is the way to hear Pet Sounds. Over the years, it's grown in esteem. It's also grown in price to the point where it went from a $20 record to a $100 record. And I think even though this has received probably 400 plus reissues over the years, including the very fine DCC and Analog Productions audiophile editions, they, and most everything since 1972, were done from a different source. The original tape is apparently lost. What most people used as a source is a copy tape of the original master. However, this particular Brother Records edition is taken from a different tape, one that the Beach Boys spent time having mastered and being cut at Artisan. This tape was overlooked in the archives for years. Tom Beery knew about this and did a search with help from the archivists and located what they felt to be the tape, although it was confusing because there were different dates and numbers on it. that could have referred to this, could have referred to that. What they had to do is actually listen to it and see if it matched the original Carl and the Passions release. And that's what Chris Bellman did. And what they noticed is the spacing between the songs, the fades, the actual timing of everything was spot on. So was the tonality and sound of the tape compared to the disc. So they were almost 100% sure they had the correct source. There were a number of other indications that are mentioned in this interview that I won't go into here, but this is the tape that was chosen to create this Definitive Sound Series release. It was mastered in an unusual way too. It's an EQ'd tape, so it already had the EQ moves built in. And the idea was to recreate the sound of the original Carl and the Passions record, but just do it with a one-step process and press it on VR900D2 vinyl. Chris Bellman found that he didn't have to do anything besides get the sound off of the tape directly to the lathe. So he didn't have to go through a console, which is another factor in why this sounds so good. It's a direct link from the tape to the lathe. It's one-step processing and eliminating a couple of steps. It's on DR900D2 vinyl, which provides a very quiet surface. And all of these things taken together give it the potential to be the best sounding ever version of Pet Sounds. I have been listening to the test pressing exclusively. I haven't been doing any comparisons yet. I'm going to save that until I get a couple of more copies beyond the AP. Michael Fremer did say something interesting about the AP that I hadn't really thought of, but it made me go back and listen briefly to the AP. He said that it had a boosted bass response, and I really hadn't thought about it before, but now that I look back on it and listen to it, yes, I can hear that. And he felt that that didn't do the music justice, that it was a little too much, that it muddied up the sound a bit on the bottom. And this record does not do that. When I listened to this, what struck me most, and I'm not going to do track-by-track analysis, none of that yet, but what struck me most about it was, even though it's a mono recording, and I reproduced it mono, there was a striking sense of dimensionality about it. It felt at times like a stereo recording. There are a couple tracks where it really is immersive and has a big open space about it and layers of depth. Now, it doesn't have different information on the right or left, but sometimes it feels like a stereo recording. And if you've ever been a person that says, all mono recordings are flat and uninvolving, you need to hear this. Like some other things that I discovered in the mono world that took me by surprise, I can think of at least two. Sgt. Pepper in mono, I prefer. The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, Pink Floyd, I prefer the mono. And Jimi Hendrix, Axis, Bold as Love, I prefer the mono. There is a case for mono being a better sounding edition, or at least one you might prefer. And I think this is going to surprise a lot of people. If you've never heard the mono edition of Pet Sounds, it is strikingly constructed. The effort that went into creating a sense of depth and space and layering and vocal harmonies is incredible. It often has this experimental wall of sound kind of feeling. So there'll be big things, lots of layers of instruments, and each one occupying its own layer as it goes back. And this is really clear, very, very clear on the one step. I think the low noise floor and, of course, the elimination of steps and this going direct to lathe really did make a difference. And I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by this. Now, I'll have more to say on this as I do the comparisons. I am working to acquire the DCC from my friend Oswaldo. I will have the AP, and I'm hoping to get a couple of other pressings, maybe even a Carl and the Passions, just to see how close they came to their goal. But this is going to retail for $100. There will be 6,000 of them. They are for the first time going to be released to retailers, so you won't have to just rely on the Capital Interscope website. All the usual suspects, the audiophile retailers will have some, and even some stores will have some as well. So this is a big anniversary release. I think it has the potential to possibly be the definitive version of Pet Sounds. That remains to be seen, and it's certainly going to open up a lot of debate. But let me know what you think about this announcement. Does it excite you? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Until next time, I'm Scott for the Pressing Matters. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.